I'm Howard Friedman. I'm the director of the Jewish Community Library, and it's really nice to have so many of you here, particularly on this beautiful day that you chose to be here. And it's actually really meaningful to me because I know we have some people who themselves went through the enormously difficult expulsion and displacement that took place in 1968. And I know we have people here who know absolutely nothing about it. And it saddens me, and I also understand why so many American Jews know so little about this event. And that's one reason I'm so glad that we are able to be together today. I do want to let you know that you are invited to stay after the event. We'll have books for sale at a 20% discount. You can browse the collection, and you can, if you're not a member of the Jewish Community Library, please know that by becoming a member, you have access to our ebook and audiobook collection with almost 1,000 titles. So even if you don't live nearby, you can take advantage of our collection, and there's absolutely no charge for anything we do. And that is because we have the Friends of the Jewish Community Library. You can ask me or Judy Bast in the back about the Friends who account for more than 90% of the library's budget. And today's program is made possible by Larry Bergheimer. And I also want to acknowledge Basha Leifer, who's here, and herself somebody who went through this ordeal in 1968 and let me know about Sabina and her wonderful book, so I'm very grateful. I am really happy that we're able to be here for this event for the translation of Notes from Exile. As you'll learn in today's program, the book has played a very important role in Poland, particularly for those wishing to face this challenging historical legacy. The book has earned praise from Nobel laureate Olga Tokarczuk and has been the basis of popular stage and television adaptations in Poland. And we're just so glad it's finally available in English. And Sabina will be joined in conversation by Sue Fishkoff, who is the editor of J, the Jewish News of Northern California, and she wrote a lovely piece, if you didn't see it, in this week's J on Sabina. And Sue is also the author of the books Kosher Nation and the Rebbe's Army, which you can also borrow at the table over there. So please join me in welcoming Sabina Baral and Sue Fishkoff.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Howard, very much. And thank you, everyone, for coming out today. This book, Notes from Exile, is very personal. It's her personal story. It's highly readable. It's beautiful. It's disturbing. And it tells a really important story. Some of you know the story, some of you were part of the story. In 1967, when it begins, there were about 25,000 Jews left in Poland. It was a very sad remnant of the 3.9 million Jews who lived in Poland before the Holocaust. About 25,000 were left in 1967. And as Sabina recounts in her book, over the next 2 years, 1968 and 69, half of those Jews, more than 11,000 people, were forced out of their homes, their jobs, and eventually their country as part of a government-sanctioned anti-Zionist campaign. It started as a student protest in March 1968, and it very quickly took on an anti-Jewish tone as the Polish government told the Jews they should go back to their real country, Israel, instead of the place that they lived their entire lives and suffered so much during the war. Sabina was one of those people pushed out of Poland in 1968. She and her parents, who like everyone of their generation were Holocaust survivors, they were given 3 weeks to liquidate their assets, 3 weeks, and wrap up their lives. Like all the other immigrants, forced immigrants, each person could take $5 in cash with them. They were stripped of their Polish citizenship, issued visas to Israel, whether or not they wanted to go there, and that was that. It was, as Sabina writes, the only post-war exile of Jews from Europe. And I didn't know about it I was the editor of a Jewish publication. I've worked in the Jewish media for 40 years. My master's thesis at Columbia University was on Soviet policy in Poland at the end of the Second World War. I'm embarrassed. I knew that some Polish Jewish intellectuals were exiled, but I did not know this amazing story. And Sabina, I'd like to know, first I want to talk a little bit about the book and then have you tell your story. When and why did you decide to write this memoir, and did its success in Poland surprise you?
So, to tell the truth, I didn't really ever decide to write this book.
Louder, it's not.
Oh, huh?
Good. Mic close to your mouth.
So, in somewhere in the 60s, the early 60s, no, let me back up a little bit more. I went to a Jewish school in Poland. I went to a Jewish school in the city of my birth. It was a school where I went from first grade to matriculation. The program of the school was the same as the curriculum in all the normal schools, plus Yiddish, plus Jewish history. So I speak Yiddish and I know Jewish history. There's a woman sitting there in the fourth row here, Hanka, who went to the same school. Can you believe it?
This was in Wrocław, right?
Yeah, we've known each other since like this. So, my first husband was an American, and he was from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I sort of envied him when we went to Grand Rapids and we would go to visit his school and his friends, and this is where we did this, and this is where we did that, and this is where I started learning judo. He was a judoka. And I didn't have any of that. I graduated high school in 65. In 68, we all scattered to the four winds, as it turns out, to 14 countries. And I didn't have a class. My class was gone. And I wanted to have a class. I wanted to have people who knew me when I was like this. I wanted to have people who knew my parents, who knew my parental home, and who were witnesses of my growing up. So somewhere in the early 60s, with the 3 people with whom I had contact from my class, we were 36 in our class, 35 left in 1968. I had contact with 3, and I said, you know what? Let's make an effort. Let's try to find our class. And we did. I mean, somebody said on Skype, there was Skype then.
What year was this? Not the 1960s. When was this?
It was in the 60s, yeah. We had our reunion in 1965.
No, 2000.
No, we graduated, sorry. We graduated high school in 65.
Right.
And this was in 2015, the 40th anniversary of our high school graduation.
And that's when you wrote the book, after that graduation anniversary.
I was asked to speak at this gathering. It was an incredible gathering. Of the 36 that left, then 27 came to Wrocław for this reunion, with spouses, with children, some already with grandchildren. We were probably 60 people. I wrote to the mayor of the city, asked for us to be received in the city hall. We were. And I wrote a speech for that It was, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. In Polish, you can find it on the internet, on YouTube.
You have the translation in the book.
Yes, there is a translation in the book. And I was making notes for what I wanted to say at this reunion. There were so many mixed emotions. Gratitude for being received with caviar and champagne. The juxtaposition of that and the memories of how when we were leaving, my high school friends who came from 14 countries. It was a very meaningful gathering. And I was making notes for what am I going to say there. And this didn't work. I threw this in the drawer, and then a year later I wrote something else, and I threw this in the drawer, and finally this drawer barely opened because there were so many different notes and scraps of paper with stuff. And I kept looking at it and saying, this is a piece of history, not just my history. It's a piece of history. And we had sort of a fake aunt in Poland. We were such tiny families, all of us Jews in Poland, tiny families. Nobody had aunts or uncles or grandparents. You know, the Poles would say, if they wondered if some family was Jewish, they would say, do they have a grandparent? And say, if they do, they're not Jewish.
That was because of the Holocaust.
Yeah, nice. So this aunt, who was the best friend of my mother-in-law lived in Australia. There's a story about her also in the book. And she said, you have to write a book about this. Nobody in Poland knows about it. Nobody knows about it, and they have to. And I started meeting with people. I said, what does it say in history books about 1968? There was something, you know, the tiny paragraph, 3 lines, whatever, that was presented mostly. Oh my God, I know these people.
Not all of us, but I'm glad to be here anyway.
Oh, I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad you're here. I'm so glad they're here. They are, can I say?
Yes.
They are Jews from Venezuela and dear friends of mine.
Let's, it's amazing to me the very Jewish childhood that you had after the war. And that was because the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, the Joint, was allowed to operate in Poland after the war. And you had schools and summer camps and really a Jewish life in Poland after the war. And that all stopped in June 1967, as you write in the book and as you told me, with the Six-Day War. And Poland was part of the Soviet bloc, part of the Warsaw Pact, and took the side of the Arabs. And there were speeches by government officials, saying the Jews in Poland aren't really Polish. And then there was this student strike in March 1968 that very quickly became anti-Jewish, and then the persecutions began. I wonder if you would read, you have a couple of pages that we prepared together from your book that tells what it was like for your family as a microcosm for what the other Polish Jews went through. What was it like when you were forced to make the decision to leave a country that you didn't want to leave, right? It was very different than the Soviet Jewish refuseniks who wanted desperately to leave the Soviet Union, and the state Dufka prevented them. Poland, it was the opposite. The Jews didn't want to leave, and the state made it impossible for you to stay. So please read from these pages from your book.
An unexpected new dilemma, farcical on the surface, but humiliating and painful in practice. what to do with that little bit of money that would have remained after we sold everything, paid all the requisite fees and anticipated expenses, set aside the $5 per person, our allowed safety funds, and created a reserve for the yet-to-be dispensed bribes, which paved our way to departure. Years later, a bottomlessly sad realization. By spending this money, we squandered years of shy, modest, unspoken, trauma-laced dreams my parents may have had in their gray post-war existence. 2 Holocaust survivors who never dared to speak of dreams. And now, after years of painstaking denial, of darning socks, we darn socks, of mending clothes, using threadbare towels, soldering pots, and wearing the same pair of fatigued shoes yet another year, they spend sleepless nights thinking of reasonable ways to spend their meager savings. And a farce. Is there anything in Poland, anything at all, that could be of use or value in the West? So during the days, the 21 days, when not in line to collect stamps or meeting potential buyers of our bed or frying pan, they frenetically ran around the stores and paid ridiculous bribes to buy something, anything which could be useful, at the unspecified other end of our upcoming journey. The shelves in Wrocław stores were habitually empty. Anything resembling desirable merchandise, actually anything resembling altogether, was hidden under the counters. The dusty shelves were stale and gray, and the personnel disinterested in anything approximating service. But the Jewish exile energized the scene. Like in Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, the bright lipstick sales ladies now pouted an air of importance and secret knowledge as they dispensed from under the counter china, bedding, or sugar unseen by mere mortals, and collected bribes. Nothing was accomplished without bribes. The most dreaded formality still awaited us. The awareness that it's coming weighed on us greatly. By appointment, the 3 of us went to the local police station, where in a seedy office, we each copied in our own handwriting and the supplied text. I hereby renounce the citizenship. I somehow couldn't stop looking at the half-eaten sandwich on the desk of this uniformed functionary. There were so many Jews to strip of citizenship that he did not have time for a proper midday meal. He collected our government issue identifications, put them in a file cabinet behind, and in return handed us travel documents where, in several languages, right in the front, it declared, "The bearer of this document is not a citizen of Poland." We knew it was coming, but the moment was overwhelming. No return from here, no drumbeat, just the end. The fee collected for this privilege was audaciously high, 5,000 zlotys per person, an equivalent of 2.5 months' average salary. That's what each Jew paid Poland to lose their home and country. I'm reminded of a story from the Holocaust, when in the town of Chortkov, the Germans ordered each Jew to pay for the bullets used to shoot them. Our story is not nearly as dramatic, but the devious minds that invented it were of similar ilk.
Thank you very much. I wanted Sabina to read so you can see that she writes this book in a very personal and highly readable style. It includes a lot of history and a lot of statistics, but I really felt as if you were speaking to me when I was reading it, and that's what makes it so memorable as well as important. Talk to us a little bit about the mad dash that your parents made in those weeks in December 1968 to collect goods, buy some goods that they could take with them. It had to be goods that were made in Soviet bloc countries after the war, no documents, no old photographs, no antiques. What were some of the things your parents packed up that were useful and maybe not so useful?
I don't think anything was useful. They bought what they could buy. There were rumors that if you go to the small towns nearby Wrocław, there's fewer Jews, so there's got to be more goods to buy. My father came back from these excursions with various things. One time he came with something called produce. I never heard of a produce in my life before, but produce was a contraption that apparently helped you bake cakes in the West. Now, our knowledge, I want to say this with full responsibility for what I'm saying, we knew nothing about life in the West. Our knowledge was from films, from the beautiful renditions of War and Peace or the Westerns. They didn't bake cakes. Natasha didn't bake cakes. So I had no idea what this thing was. It didn't even occur to us that the electric plug wouldn't fit into.
It was on a different current.
It was on a different current. It was 120 versus 220 and different voltage and all that. There was in our luggage a folded bicycle made in East Germany. It was called the Diamant, this folded bicycle. The idea that folded bicycles are a great mitzvah, that you have to have a folded bicycle, came from Israel because the distances were short and they all had small apartments, so storing a full bicycle that doesn't fold was more complicated. So we came to Detroit with a folded bicycle. If anybody thinks that you can get anywhere on a bicycle in Detroit, let me tell you. We had bedding made from damask, the best there was. Beautiful colors, beautiful embroidery, all the best there is. And within a few weeks of our arrival to Detroit, we learned that bedding in America is non-iron. Now, of course, this damask bedding was meant to be sold. This is not for us. We never had anything luxurious in our lives. So who are we going to sell this damask bedding to if bedding is non-iron? Who's going to want to stand there and iron the damask? But we had that. We had a Russian photo camera. It was in a big yellow box. I don't think we ever opened the box, not to mention we ever knew how to take a picture. This thing got lost somewhere. I have no idea what became of it. We had Polish crystal. Poland was known from, of course. Poland was known for its crystal, but it was known only in the socialist countries. This crystal was thick, ugly, cut in a very crude way, but it was crystal. And we brought so many pieces of this crystal. The most expensive ones, colorful, were meant for people who helped us along the way. And now, I swear, even to this day, when I speak with my friends and the subject comes to the crystal, there is this amazing, you still have yours? Well, you know, my mother gave most to some cleaning ladies or to caregivers or whatever. This was the end of the crystal. I don't know. I think I still have a piece. Yeah.
So,
Do you have any? Do you have any? The little glasses, shot glasses.
Sabina, he has it.
I see you gave, yeah.
One.
if anybody has some Polish crystal they need to give away, just let me know. I love the stuff. Tell us a little about your journey. You know, what you packed was perhaps humorous, not so humorous when you finally got to Detroit and realized what you could have brought with you. But your family left. You had to go to Vienna first because that's where the Sochnut, the Jewish agency, looked at your Israeli visas and you could say yes or no. Your family told the Sochnut you didn't want to go to Israel, that you had a guarantor in Detroit, right? But on your way, you couldn't go right to America. You had to go to Rome first. And how long were you in Rome? And you worked for HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society there, yes?
Yeah. Yeah, we had to go to Rome because while the Austrian government, Vienna, volunteered at first to say we will be the transition place for all these Polish Jews, they realized that very few of them actually, statistically, I have the statistics in the book, 28% only went to Israel. So it wasn't really on the way, but also there were many people, thousands of people, and Vienna wasn't prepared to house them and to keep them, so they somehow made a deal with the HIAS in Rome. And I worked for HIAS for 8 months. It was the most extraordinary job of my life, really. It was a job where I learned the most and cried the most and encountered more trauma. And I didn't even know then the word trauma.
And you were helping other Polish Jews navigate the bureaucracy because of all the languages that you spoke. You could speak English and you learned German, right, to talk, and you learned some Italian and the Yiddish and the Polish. But some of the stories that you write in the book of the other Polish Jews who were coming through, there was a story of the family with the cat and the family with the coffin. Would you tell those two stories? They were extraordinary.
Sure. So, yeah, I had to learn Italian. This was sort of the requirement of my job because all our people, our Polish Jews, rented rooms from Italians. So we had to communicate somehow. And there were no cell phones at the time. None of that would help us, and we had to communicate with them. There was a procedure. You will read in the book about the procedure. It was it was very well thought out, but it was complicated, had a few steps along the way, and most of us had to go through it. So I remember so many unbelievable family stories. I remember a brother and a sister, they were the age of my parents, who were both of them left professorships at the university in Warsaw, in humanities. They were not going to have an easy time finding a job in the US or wherever. And they brought with them their cat. And I think this was the first animal of our immigration. I later learned, and I also described it in more detail in the book, that there was apparently some places in Poland that said you can leave your pets with us and prepay for life, their medical care and comforts and whatever. And many people did that, and then these animals were put to sleep within a short time. But these two professors brought with them their cat. And we didn't exactly, Hayas didn't exactly know what to do with the cat. There is a quarantine requirement, there were vaccine requirements, there was this, there was that. And these two professors were very unruly. They cried. They realized that because cats in Rome are homeless, cats don't belong to people. They live on streets. So you could see a ton of hungry, scabby cats schlepping around the Corsa Argentina or something like that. And this family just imagined that this might happen to their cat. And they weren't articulate about it for two very educated people. All they knew was how to cry. And we were trying. My boss, Sergio, he was an Italian, and he didn't want to have anything to do with the cat story. He said, I'm not paid here to take care of cats. There's thousands of people 2 days a week. Trains came from Vienna full of Jews. He says, I don't have time for cats. So these poor people, whenever they walked into our office, they stayed away from their nemesis and went straight for my desk as if I could help the cat. But the cat, the story of the cat ends well. The cat eventually went to America with his own ticket, sitting between them, and the cat went to America.
The next story, not so happy.
And this story, not so happy. There was a family that brought with them a coffin. To this day, I get choked up when I think about it. The coffin apparently held the remnants of their daughter who died in her childhood of scarlet fever. I can't even imagine to this day the bribes they had to pay to get this coffin excavated at the cemetery and then bring it to Vienna. I have no idea where the coffin was in Vienna. And here we have a coffin in Rome. And these people were different. They were not like the cat people. They were dignified, they were quiet, but it was very clear to all of us they're not going anywhere without that casket. And I mean, where to even keep this casket while they are in Rome? Most of us were in Rome for several months. Rent a garage outside of town or what, and the Italian functionaries, I think quite reasonably, demanded that we open the casket to demonstrate what's inside. They were upset. They were yelling to me, droga, signorina, droga, drugs. Could be, and these people were resisting every request to open the casket. I tried to get involved and help. In Italy, cemeteries consist of crypts. There's like a tall building and you shove in the coffins like a drawer in an apothecary. And so maybe we could rent one of those for a few months or so. Again, Sergio wasn't of no help. I don't want to have anything to do with this casket. And he just kept saying, leave it to somebody above you, of course, is gonna take care of the casket. But we had to say something to the American Embassy. After all, we were asking them to take a sealed and shot coffin. Not a normal story. I don't know how this story ended. By the time I left Rome, it was still happening.
Yeah. And thousands of similar stories, all these people moving through Rome. You made it to Detroit. You built a good life for yourself. You married, first to the American, then to a fellow Polish Jew. Between the two of you, you have 5 children, 5 adult children, doing well. You founded your own company, importing stone and granite and marble. It wasn't the same for your parents and their generation. It never is for the older generation that comes over. What does it mean to lose your homeland for you and your parents? And is Poland your homeland? Do you feel Polish?
I'll start from the end. I'm not Polish. When we first came, when people asked me where you're from, I would say I'm from Europe because I didn't want to give Poland not even a little bit of me. Now, to be completely honest, I spent 20 formidable years in Poland. I grew up on Polish food. I like pierogi to this day. The music of Chopin is closer to me than any other composer. I, to this day, know and recite Polish poetry. And again, I have learned Polish. After we came to Detroit, in my home, my parents and we stopped speaking Polish. We switched to Yiddish, and I have not spoken Polish until my husband and I moved to Sweden. This is sort of a bizarre thing, but we lived in Sweden for 15 years. And in Stockholm, there's like 1,000 people from our exile. And so while at home, we continue speaking English to each other, my husband and I, and to our children. I have an American home, American children. I celebrate Thanksgiving and Passover. Those are the big holidays in my home. But in Stockholm, every evening a dinner party was in Polish. And I had to relearn Polish, which I have, obviously, to write a book in Polish. I will tell you one of the achievements of this book is that fragments of the book were published in a school manual for high schools called The Art of Expression. So my Polish is adequate at this point. But with all these connections, and now so many people helped me in this journey with the book. I made so many connections, really wonderful people. I have friends in Poland now. But I remember, and this is the principal part of the answer to Sue's question, Poland was the only country in the world where I couldn't be Polish. I could be Polish anywhere else. In the States, once I started saying I'm from Poland, are you Polish? No, I'm not Polish, I'm Jewish. Are you from Israel? The issue of identity is a very personal, delicate issue. I learned that for the first time when I was discussing with a German consul in Rome while I still worked for Hayes, and he says, "You were born in Breslau?" He used the German name for the city of my birth. "You're German." And I had quite a thought process about this business of identity, and could identity be quite the contrary? In any case, I don't feel Polish. I never think of myself as Polish. And whether you're asking this question or not, Sue, I have not forgiven. I have not forgiven because I expected, partly was the journey, was the book, when I had time to think about it and really reflect on this whole story. I expected that someday I'll get a letter in the mailbox, Polish passport, and a couple words, like, you don't have to be elaborate, but hey, it was a mistake. We shouldn't have. Forgive us. But it never came. I can apply for it, and after some effort, I could get it.
Your passport, the Polish passport.
Yeah, Polish citizenship. I don't want it. I will never apply for it. And when they push me, my friends there, now, people who really could make things happen, say, why don't you? I say, you know what, I have Swedish citizenship, I have American citizenship, I don't need that. I don't want it. I'm not Polish. Now, parents is a different story. Not just my parents, all of our parents. Let me tell you, for Holocaust survivors, our parents were all roughly the same age, because older people were killed, younger people were killed. Only the people who were in their 20s, 30s, who were strong enough to work, possibly had a chance to survive. My mother survived in a Russian Siberian labor camp. My father was in the Russian army. He wanted to fight the Nazis, and the Polish partisans didn't want Jews. They wouldn't accept them. They were afraid. So this is how my parents survived. But they were all the same age. And then the compulsion after the war of rebuilding the nation, having children. So most of us, within a few years, couple years plus or minus, we're all the same age. And we succeeded in life. And our parents, having 3 weeks to prepare, to learn a language, and then they came to Detroit. And they learned eventually enough English to go to the store and buy eggs or whatever. But theater, literature. My mother was a funny person. She really was a funny person. She had a wonderful sense of humor. But she lost her sense of humor in English. She couldn't. So for our parents in every country, and I have so many stories of other families here, because I wanted to honor what people went through in Israel and what people went through in Germany and what people went through elsewhere. Our parents all left Poland for us or sent us by ourselves. There were many like that. And whether they knew or they didn't know, life for them was very difficult in the West. Very difficult.
Before we end our part of this and open it up to questions from the audience, I was struck by, in your book, how you kept in touch with so many people, Jews that you knew from your hometown, and some of those people are here today. And I wonder if you would just raise your hand if you were from Wrocław or part of this community. We have someone who you knew as a child, someone you knew as a child. You went to their wedding in Pasadena. That story and their photograph is in the book.
We met on a train from Poland.
Okay. So it's the Polish Jewish exile community from those years, because it was a trauma that happened so quickly, really stuck together, and that stayed with me as a beautiful and an important part of this story.
We have blogs. We have, not anymore, because the reunions that we had every 3 or 4 years were all in Israel, and then the last 2 were canceled, one because of COVID and the other one because of the war. But we stuck together. We stuck together.
Thank you, Sabina. Thank you very much. Let's take some questions. Thank you. Thank you. Gentleman in the back, and then you right here.
Me?
Yes.
Okay, my mother was born in Warsaw, and I was born in Cuba because of this. I just want to make a comment. The Polak did you a great favor by kicking you out, okay, because he clarified your status. I know your story when it came out in the 1960s, and the American Jews are dependent on the New York Times and other publications that don't want to declare ugly truths. That's why they don't know about it. I knew about it, I was reading about it, but nobody else cared. So what I'm saying is that in a certain sense, you were lucky. You should have gone from Warsaw to Israel first instead of going to Rome. That's all that I have to say.
Well, that's good. You, and then the person in the back, and then gentleman in here. First with the white hair right behind you. Silver hair.
First of all, thank you so very much. I'm very, very anxious to read the whole story. Bless your heart. I am still not clear on the politics of what was happening in Poland that caused this immigration. And so maybe I'll get it in the book, but I'm still not clear on that. So if you have time to speak a little bit more about that, and specifically when the Jews left, were there specific people named to leave, or was it, I'm going to put in quotes, voluntary?
Yes and yes and yes.
Yeah, right.
Do a brief description, because the politics are difficult, but you can summarize it. It's all in the book.
It's all in the book. Not only, it's all in the book, and not only that, but I have an extensive foreword here from Dariusz Stola, who is a historian in Poland, who did his PhD on our immigration, and he I don't like words like philo-Semitic or whatever, but he has been for 5 years the executive director of the Polish Jews Museum. So his intentions shouldn't be doubted. And he describes here the political scenario that took place. But it's exactly like Sue says, it's a yes and a yes and a yes. Do they need an excuse? Do they need now an excuse?
And it was extraordinary that many people were named, that the Polish authorities kept track of who was Jewish. Even the Jews didn't always know. That was extraordinary to me. That's
I
in the
want to
book.
say something about that, and then Hanka, you can jump in.
A few sentences. Go ahead.
Okay, but I want to say something. In 1967, when Israel came out victorious of the Six-Day War, the Poles decided that before this whole immigration business transpired, the Poles decided that it's dangerous to have Jewish officers in the army. Now,
The Polish government.
the government, the government, of course, and the higher command, the highest command of the army, they
Was
decided,
it the Polish or the Russian?
no.
Yes and yes. Was it the
Yes
Polish
and yes.
government or the Soviet government? Yes and yes.
Yes and yes,
It was a
exactly.
purge of the Jews in the Polish
In the
military.
military. But there were many Jews in the military, relatively many, because they joined the army like my dad did because they wanted to fight the Nazis. They were in their 20s. They lost the opportunity for higher education or so. They simply fought and came back. Many stayed in the army. The army was particularly demanding that there were no Jewish-sounding names among the officers. So they had to change their names, or they were requested to change their names. I know one story where the guy said simply, "My wife doesn't agree," and they somehow let him go and not change his name. But most changed names. I know one family I described here where he not only changed his name, but he changed the parents' names from Chaim and Fruma to something sounding Polish, and his mother's maiden name. Now, come 1967, and they go down the list that they have kept since right after the war. They know everybody who is Jewish. They kept track. Hanka?
So can I add, politically, it's not such a long story. Basically, when the student strikes started, there were student strikes there in 68. The government was afraid, let me step down. They were afraid that the workers will join. There were also another political situation. So they basically resorted to the old formula, and it's Jewish fault. There were 30,000, 25,000 Jews, 30 million Poles. We were insignificant, that included little kids. But they reverted. The propaganda was amazing. They did not call us Jews, that was not politically correct. It's a very similar situation. They called us Zionists. Our friends, Vienna's father, they by name would name it. All the newspapers, TV were government owned. This is communist socialist. So it's not such an old, the president of Polish Communist Socialist Party stood up in a televised speech and said, their Jews are not loyal to Poland. They are Zionists, they have double loyalty or one loyalty, and that's not the Poles, and the borders are open, let them go. And that's what happened. This is basically very simple. Jews were blamed because they were afraid, and it takes root. It takes root not just in Poland. We see it can take root anywhere in the world. So,
Thank you, childhood friend. We have one person in the front, and then you had a question, or was it taken care of? Okay, and then you, sir, and then 1, 2. So you, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, my question is, how could your parents stay in Poland I was in Poland. We came back from Russia, and we came back to Poland. The hatred for Jews, Żyd. It was so, the way it was said, with such
Contempt.
and hatred. Żyd. And how could you stay in Poland? There was no opportunity for business. We lost our flour mill. We lost our home. We had nothing. How could we? And the hatred. People were killed in the middle of the street because they were Jews. How could you stay in Poland with all that hatred?
After the war.
After the war.
After the war, yes. You know, I can't answer for my parents because the question really is to the generation of my parents. The street I lived on, Yeah, the street I lived on was a Jewish street. It was called Wojtkowica. The synagogue was there. It was a Jewish street. The people that lived on that street were traumatized beyond words. And we didn't, as I said, we didn't know what trauma meant. We didn't know what transgenerational transfer of trauma is. We didn't understand any of these things. They stayed because they were too injured to do anything else.
Thank you. Every story is different. Every reaction is different. Oh, now you have the question first. Now you move to the back of the line. 1, 2, 3.
Hi, I do not have a question or any answers. But,
And then make it short, please.
What do you want?
You've waited this long, and you want me to make it short.
Yeah.
My best Yiddish accent. What you were talking about in the end of your discussion hit a nerve with me. I was born in Chicago, my brother was born in Chicago. Both my parents came to Chicago, started their families, and the rest is history, I guess. And as a small child, I knew that they came from Poland. My mother was from Lodz, and my father, I believe, was from Warsaw. He never discussed any of that stuff. My mother would if I prod her, but my father just never brought up the past. We barely knew his brother and his sister. But anyway, you said when you acknowledged that you were Polish, you didn't say you were Polish when somebody said, "Oh, then you're Polish." You said, "No, I'm not Polish." That struck me because at one point I said to my mother, "Well, you were born in Poland, so you were Polish." She said, "No, we were Jewish.
Yeah.
We are Jewish." And I think this must be like a universal thing, that if you're from one of these countries, you don't acknowledge that you're Polish. And they learned even not to acknowledge that they were Jewish, because even in Chicago, which was full of Poles, it was best not to discuss these things. Ethnicity was sort of out of the picture.
Yeah, Poland did not have the mandate on anti-Jewish sentiment. Same in Russia. You're not Russian, you're not Ukrainian, we're Jewish, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
In the front, and then, how do I do it? Yes, 1, 2, 3. Yes, first.
Okay, couple of questions. Why did your family not move to Israel? And then a second part, and totally different, who stayed? Half of them stayed. How are their families still there? Did you keep contact with any of those people? And then, because of your comment, I'm adding in my husband's family came from Ukraine, and when my husband asked his grandfather, say something to me in Russian, because he's like, I don't know Russian. He didn't know Russian. He only spoke Yiddish. So all of these, the media, current media is saying, oh, Bernie Sanders' family is Polish, or this person's Polish. You know, it's kind of.
So why did your parents not go to Israel with you? And who stayed behind in Poland? Who were the Jews who stayed?
So we didn't go to Israel because my parents were afraid of the climate, but mostly they were afraid of another war. 67 was the end of the war. We're at the end of 68. But also another important factor was we had a guarantor in the US. And I want to say this was not a transactional thing. Our families were so tiny, so tiny. We had nobody. And my father was looking, he's the only one of his large family that survived. And he, through the International Red Cross, it was very common then to send out letters everywhere looking for survivors of this family. So they would describe, my father was Chaim and my mother was Tevya, and looking for relatives. Maybe somebody survived somewhere. So he didn't find anybody that he was looking for, but he found 2 cousins in Detroit who were children of his uncle that immigrated in the interwar period for work. And the children stayed and they guaranteed. So we were gonna have family. We were gonna have family. And that was exciting. Now, who stayed? Yes, I know many of the people who stayed because they come to my authors' meetings in Poland. And I have heard from hundreds of them, thousands of them. The young people that stayed were younger than us. They were too young, they were children. They were mostly from mixed families, where one of the parents was Jewish, one was Polish, and they couldn't find agreement on immigrating, and so staying was the default situation. Many of those have left since. Not necessarily to Israel, not necessarily to the US. They left wherever they could, whenever they could. Now there's no place to go, they say.
2 more questions, the what in the white and then the black hat. And then you, sir.
Hi, I wanted to thank you for coming. My parents also left under the same circumstances. They're a little bit older than you. They actually, in 68, they tried to stick it out and they thought it would blow over, and eventually left in 69, but they had a 2-year-old kid, and my mother was very pregnant, 8.5 months pregnant, and they left in a big hurry to Sweden. But the visa to Sweden was very difficult to get. They didn't know until the night before they left if they were going to go to Sweden or Denmark. They got to Sweden, and then 3 weeks later, I was born. So I was born in Sweden. Similar to your parents, they tried to figure out what they could take with them to sell once they got to Sweden. And in their case, all it was a pile of linens, the same damask that your bedding was probably made out of. And of course, they got to Sweden and couldn't sell it, or I don't know. They kept it, moved to the US when I was 3. It's in my closet.
You have crystals.
No, we don't have any crystal. But to answer, I think you had the question, and I also have a question for you, but they were students at Warsaw University. My father, a little bit older than my mother, and there was a real student uprising in March of '68. They didn't have anything to do with that, but what they started doing was arresting Jews. So my father was arrested, went to jail, interrogated. The apartment was searched, ransacked, his typewriter was confiscated. He went back to university. His professors were so nice, they hurried his PhD so that he could finish, but then lost his job. And my mother, who hadn't finished, was kicked out. They lost their apartment. They weren't allowed to work, go to school, or live anywhere. So I guess there would have been an option to stay, but like, how? And so they had waited a little longer, thinking it was gonna blow over, but it got so bad in the summer of '69, they realized they had to leave, and they were told that there was a September 1st cutoff, and they left August 28th. And I was due September 10th. So that was the situation. It's, you know, it's hard even for me to understand, because I mean, I guess I was there, but like, I grew up in this very safe and secure environment, but.
And you had a question for Sabina?
Yeah, so my father, who's very much like you, does not want to regain Polish citizenship. He's done, he's very angry. But all of us, my generation and younger, are now, not my Swedish cousins, but those of us in the US are now wanting to get EU citizenship. And my question was, you have 5 children, right? How do they feel?
I just got one.
Oh, okay.
He wanted it.
That's
I
your
didn't.
son?
Yeah, they just got it.
That's my son.
Oh,
Your
same
parents
deal.
and us are
Yeah.
a few years apart only. And he said, just in case, this is
The bitter irony.
ingrained. It's
Yeah.
ingrained in people that go through hell
To have
like
an escape
this,
plan.
that
Yeah.
you have another plan.
Yeah.
Apparently, there are 40,000 waiting, mostly from Israel, to get their citizenship back, just as a security. It
Yeah.
has nothing to do with Poland, really.
Yeah, we're in
Because
the
you can
process.
immigrate to any of the EU countries.
I will tell you a tiny story that I know is true, was told to me in one of those environments. And this is a family, a Jewish family from India. From Iran. They were, as you know, post, 850,000 Jews kicked out of Muslim countries and Arabic countries post-war, and this family schleps around all over the world, goes here, goes there, tries to find a place for themselves. They finally land in New York. They're happy in New York. Everything is good. They live in a tiny apartment. Half of the apartment are suitcases. Empty suitcases. So one day, the precocious son, who wants to have another plan, but is tired of the old plan, says, why don't we get rid of these suitcases? What are they for? And the mother looks at him and says, and what are we gonna do if they kick us out from here? I will also tell you just a tiny about my husband. My husband stayed in Poland until 1970 because he wanted to finish medical school. He was raised by his mom only. It's a story fully in the book. And his mom was also a medical doctor. And when he was leaving, because he left the day for Sweden, the day after he received his medical school diploma. His mom decided not to join him. A mom alone. And she felt, she was 49 years old then, and she felt she would be a burden to him. So she decided to stay. Every family is a story.
Have any of your children applied for or gotten Polish citizenship?
They can't without me. But I will tell you, and I describe this quite thoroughly in the book. Our sons, who are Edward's sons, have Swedish citizenship as well because he immigrated to Sweden and then only later moved to the US. My daughters don't. And so my older daughter, who is a very reasonable woman, says, "Mom, why not? Why not? My Swedish citizenship doesn't go to them because I wasn't born in Sweden." And she says, "Why not?" And I describe here at length what happened when I investigated. But the bottom line was, it was Passover. I remember I sat them down and I said there will be no Polish citizenship.
Let's have the last two questions, woman with the black hat, and then long waiting, sir, here.
I'll keep it short. My mother was born in Krakow in 1917. She was safely in the United States in 1928. But what is unusual about my family is 8 of my mother's first cousins survived the Holocaust in Europe. It was a large family. 6 of them made Aliyah by 1948. The 7th couldn't get out of Poland until 1955. The 8th had to leave Poland in 1968. He and his non-Jewish wife moved to Sweden.
Yeah.
That's the story of so many in this room and so many you both know.
You had no idea what you were getting into when you
I treasure this. This is the stuff that makes life worth living. Yes, last question. Talking about it, not living through it.
My question spans many of the years. So you graduated high school in '65?
Yes.
There was a 50-year reunion in 2015?
Yes, 40, yeah.
Right. In the intervening years, you had not been back, is that correct?
To Poland?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. When you were growing up, among non-Jews that you knew, non-Jews, did you sense anti-Jewish sentiment? And did you feel...
Did I ever?
Yeah. No, but people that you may have called friends.
Yes.
And when you went back in 2015,
Please.
from what I know of modern Poland, my question is, did you feel as though the hospitality that you were extended and the mayor reading the proclamation and everything was stagey? Or had the sentiments that resulted in the expulsion of the Jews in the 60s, had that waned? Had things somehow softened?
And it was actually 2010 and the 45th high school graduation.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
You're welcome. You wrote it. I'm just reading.
5 years. Okay.
I had a Polish boyfriend. He went with us to the border and ran after the train at the border. We were planning a future together. We expected that both families would protest, both families, and we figured that somehow we'll manage. He was definitely my first love. Our neighbor, who she was sort of the neighborhood seamstress, spoke about us, the Jews but nice. Żydzi ale fajni. This is the way she described us.
For a Jew, you're all right.
Yeah. But, you know, when time came to be selling all the things that we had to sell, she would stand there with my mother in the room, we had to empty the apartment and everything had to be gone. Some people were told to repaint the apartment. Some people were told to remodel the apartment for the needs of the people who were taking over the apartment. You have no idea what was going on. But she would stand with my mother and say, Pani Esterko, my mother's name is Estera, Pani Esterko, this sofa is not gonna sell, you know this. And you're gonna be stuck with this sofa here and you have to leave an empty apartment. Maybe we should just take away this sofa now. And
So helpful.
so helpful. It's hard to speak of Poland in general. It's hard to speak of Poland in general because I was so fortunate with this book, and I met so many exceptional people, vocal, visible, really at the forefront of Polish culture. And I've received nothing but good from them. You know, the woman that decided to play this Jewish monodram in her theater, she's also the owner of the theater. She decided to play this Jewish monodram and has been playing it over 200 times.
She's performing your book, which was written as a one-woman drama.
Yeah. The Olga Tokarczuk, the most recent Polish Nobel Prize laureate in literature. She sits in a synagogue in Wrocław and interviews me for an hour and a half. You know, putting her authority and her values right out there. She says, what is wrong with us?
She's not Jewish.
She's not Jewish, and there is this interview, an hour and a half long interview, is actually with English subtitles available on YouTube. So I have met so many fine people. I have now Polish friends, more than I ever did before. But I also recognize that I could be walking on a street, on the most elegant street, with the most elegant boutiques, and there is a Star of David on a gallows shown. And they tell me, don't pay attention, this is idiots. No, they're not idiots. It's not my job. It's not my job. So it's hard to speak of anyone, you know, are all San Franciscans pro-Trump or against Trump? You know, it's hard to speak in generalities.
That's an easy one.
We're going to end.
That you have to ask that question.
We have one last remark, and then we're ending. Yes.
Hi. So, Sabina,
Yes, my friend Basha.
we're friends. Oh, thank you. Just to that topic, you said something, the people who caused the expulsion, we shouldn't conflate the 30 million Poles with the horrible government, Polish government that was, that expelled us at that time. And I think it's very important to not put what happened to us by the decree of the Communist Party in 1968 with Poles in general. On top of the fact that there are many problems in Poland and always were.
And on top of the fact that the government edict hit very fertile grounds.
Right.
Hit
Thank you.
very fertile grounds.
Thank you very much, Sabina. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And please join Sabina in the back of the room. She'll be there for discussion. You can buy her book, look at it. It's been quite a day.
And thank you so much, Sue. You did a wonderful job. And thank you, Sabina. I just wanted to say, so please stay. I do know exactly what's going to happen, which is that Sabina is going to be mobbed but I would like her to be able to go to the back table to be able to sign books, and which are for sale, 20% discount, and feel free to stay around, look at books and schmooze.
Are there any Jews from Latin America here? Any Spanish speaking Jews? No, no.